Now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door must take on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. A lot of comic creators who are a part of groups like Comicsgate like to say that their comic books aren't woke. And I have to say that we need to raise the bar for quality for comic books to be higher than what people are calling woke comic books. Now, the reason why I say we have to raise the bar for quality to be higher than just a comic being so-called woke is because those who are a part of groups like Comicsgate and those on the right really cannot even define what the definition of the word woke actually means. And this was shown in a viral video where a conservative author was embarrassed on the air, where she was asked what the definition of woke was and couldn't come up with the clear definition to the term. And if a author of a book on the term woke can't come up with the definition for the word, then this shouldn't be a barometer for quality or a standard for what a quality comic book should be for a customer. Because for me, the barometer for quality needs to be measured by standards such as the quality of the writing, the quality of the art, and the overall story presented inside of the pages of that comic, something that many members of Comicsgate claim that they were all about as related to their independent projects. Because members of Comicsgate used to claim that their books are supposed to be of a higher quality than what they say the quote-unquote woke comic books are. But when I take a look at all of these books, whether they be these crowdfunded indie comics or these mainstream comics that are produced by companies like Marvel and DC, I want to judge them on the content of what is presented on the page, not what is presented as related to the politics or the ideology of the individuals presenting them. Now, what I see from the Comicsgate crowdfunded books and the so-called woke comics produced by Marvel and DC is that neither one of them really meets a standard for quality as related to the craft of comic book storytelling. And because neither meets the standard, it's not because of the politics that's presented, but because of the inexperience of the individuals. And that's why I can no longer call what they call a so-called woke comic from the mainstream so-called woke. And when I look at many of these independent comics that are crowdfunded, I'm looking at some of those that are a part of Comicsgate and groups like that with a side eye, because what I'm seeing from both groups is books that are coming from individuals who clearly show me that they have inexperience as related to the craft of comics, and it's that inexperience as related to the craft of comics that is coming across on the pages of the stories that they tell. Now, an example of this was shown to me with the hyped up Isom that was created by Eric July. When I look at that Isom comic, it is no different than many of what they call the books by the social justice warriors who work over at Marvel and DC. And in both cases, I'm looking at books that are coming from individuals who really don't have much experience as related to the craft of comic book storytelling. Moreover, when I look at both books, I see that both writers don't really have much life experience, and that comes across as related to what is presented in the pages of the stories that I have read. So when I look at these comics objectively, I can say that the barometer for a good comic isn't whether or not that it's so-called woke. No, the barometer for a good comic for me is the ability to answer 3 critical questions in less than 3 to 5 pages. Who is the main character? What do they want to accomplish? And most importantly, why should we care? A good writer can go out here and let the reader know what this is within 3 to 5 pages of their comic. And if they can do this in 3 to 5 pages, then they can go out here and take the next 15 to 20 pages to go out here and establish their story. And if, depending on the length of that story, some people can get an entire story done in 22 pages. Others will be setting up for the first plot point by the end of that issue. And good writers can go out here and put together a solid structure of a story that gives us rich multidimensional characters in an action-packed adventure. And those are the barometers that I make for quality as related to a good comic. And I believe that we need to get away from the whole standard of not being woke, because to me, a comic that is not woke is just not good enough for me as related to a quality comic. No, for a comic book, I believe that the standards need to be raised much higher and be standards that show us that this writer knows what they're doing as related to storytelling. That's what I want to see in a comic. I want to see that the writer meets some sort of standard for plot, some sort of standard for character development, some sort of standard for pacing, and I want to see a standard for the art that is very clear and concise in presenting dynamic action. These are the standards that I want to see for a comic. I want to see higher standards for independent comics, because if many of these independent creators are out here, if they want to compete in the publishing marketplace, they need to bring their best work forward, and they need to offer more to the reader than going out here and saying, oh, my comic isn't woke. Because as a publisher, I produced 2 comics, Esteem No Good Deed and John Haynes at Death's Door, and neither of those comics were what people would define as woke as related to that arbitrary term, because it doesn't focus on identity politics or social justice. No, they are action-packed stories that are just good, solid stories. And the goal that I had when I was writing those stories wasn't about trying to represent any sort of political narrative. No, it was all about presenting a quality story and showing how I can use techniques for storytelling and make them work inside of a comic book. That was my goal, was to take my whole style of storytelling and bring it to comic books when I was writing Esteem No Good Deed and John Haynes at Death's Door. And my goal for writing is to have a higher standard than just, oh, my comic isn't woke. I want my comic to be good, and I want readers to have a good reading experience when they go out here and read my comics. That's what I want for my readers, is to provide them with a quality reading experience that has them excited and anticipating the next story. That's what I want to provide for my readers, is that experience where they are in a story that they're enjoying, where they get a clear, concise art, where they get action that they can easily follow from panel to panel and transition from scene to scene. And that's what I want to create as related to my level of quality. And my standard isn't just, oh, the comic isn't woke. No, I want the comic to be great. And I want the comic to be great because a great comic is one that people are excited to pick up the next book. And a great comic is one that builds word of mouth. word of mouth outside of places like social media, which has turned into an echo chamber where people only want to hear that, oh, these comics are SJW or woke, when in actuality, from a publisher's perspective, the big problem isn't about the politics, it's about the complete lack of experience. And the problem that I'm seeing on both sides, again, is the lack of experience, because inexperienced people who don't know anything about a craft, yes, they can produce something that is so-called not woke, but the whole thing is that if you don't have experience in the craft for a medium, you're not going to be able to effectively tell a story. Moreover, if you are somebody who has no real life experience, you're not going to be able to tell a story as well, because people without life experience, what they'll do is write about what they know. And this is what happens with many of what they call the SJW comics. Many of those writers, because they are in their 20s, have never really lived life, so their entire life is out sitting in restaurants, and that's why their comics reflect sitting in restaurants. And when it comes to some of these, what they call Comicsgate creators, their experience is very limited as well, because I don't see how they settle conflicts or know how to conflict resolve or how to build action sequences. I mean, I look at their books and I see very awkwardly paced action where the person hasn't gone out here and done enough research to see how fight scenes work, or how choreography for a fight works, or how bodies move. These are things that a writer like myself, when I'm out here writing, I was in fights in junior high school, but I also watch a lot of wrestling and I watch a lot of action movies to get a sense of how bodies move. Moreover, I also take a look at art models to see how they pose and look at the compositions to see how the body moves. So when I'm describing an action scene, the action moves in a natural and dynamic fashion. So when I look at a lot of indie comics, I see a lot of guys, they read a lot of comic books, but they don't look at other forms of art. And that really shows as related to the action they describe. They don't really take the time to study action and movement. And that's why, again, I believe we need a higher standard than, oh, a comic isn't woke. No, in order for a comic to be good, we need a standard for quality as related to the script, which is the foundation for everything. A standard for art, in that the art must be very clear and concise. I mean, yes, you've got artists with different styles, but we need to be able to see what's going on in a story. And these are the kind of standards that are established at trade publishing houses as related to what is called a house style. And in a house style, there is a standard for a story. In a house, there is a standard for art, and there is a standard for illustration. There is a standard for everything, and that standard is no different than what you would see in a fine dining restaurant where all the food is coming out is consistent. They want to make sure that everybody gets the same experience, and the ultimate goal is making sure that the customer is satisfied by providing them with the same quality of experience, by making sure that everybody gets the same consistent cook of their food and the same food on every plate. That's what a fine dining restaurant is all about. And the comic book industry's problem is that there haven't been any standards in over 30 years. And what we have at mainstream publishing houses like Marvel and DC and in the indies is a lack of standards. And that lack of standards is where we've got this ambiguous definition of, oh, a comic isn't woke, and that means it's good. No, a comic needs to have a standard for quality. And in order to get standards for quality, you need editorial in publishing, and you need to learn about editing and coordinating a book when you're going out here being an independent publisher. So when I look at this whole situation, a lot of people are sitting there saying, oh, my book isn't woke, so you should support it because since it's woke, it means it's good. No, in the whole standard for a book being good is one that is related to the standards of storytelling, and we really need to get more creators to stop thinking about woke and start thinking about producing products that are high quality. Now, my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, is available on Lulu.com right now, and if you want to see how I write a full comic story, you can pick up John Haynes at Death's Door on Lulu by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to pick up my first digital comic, Esteem No Good Deed, which I did with Bill Walko, and you can find that comic on Kindle for 99 cents, or if you want to pick up a paper version of that comic, you can pick up that comic in the book Esteem, Blast from the Past, and pick up the other stories in the SJS Direct universe, like the ISIS series, the Steam series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, my Black sorority novel, The Thetas, my Black vampire novel, Eternal Night, and my other book, A Recipe for Success. You can find all those books in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to see me be able to produce my next full SJS Direct comic, which I want to do with the Goddess Next Door, Isis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available on Lulu, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at Lulu.com today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.